Alright, in this video, we'll create one each Windows and Linux virtual machines. A common theme throughout my videos is where I talk about my resource groups, and when I set up demos like this, I usually will create a new resource group, prefaced by delete me. Long story short, when you create VMs, you're not just creating the virtual machines, you're creating their virtual NICs, the VNets that get associated with the network security groups. And if you're not careful with your test environment, simply deleting the VM doesn't delete all of the other things that get created. So throwing my test items into a resource group named thusly lets me know it's safe to delete the whole resource group, which will delete everything inside of it. Okay, so please keep that in mind with your own pay-as-you-go account. Okay, so let's take a look at what VMs I have already. 4 Windows VMs. They're all part of the delete me resource group. We'll create a new VM inside a new resource group. Okay, so I'm able to collapse this pane to give myself more real estate. Virtual machines, that's what I'm after. From the virtual machines blade, I'm going to create a VM. I'm going to pick the correct subscription. You may have more than one. I'm going to create a new resource group. 900 denoting this is part of the AZ 900 certification track. What do I want to call it? Well, I've got VMs, Windows VMs 01 through 04. So let's stick with that convention. Windows VM 05. I'll throw it in East United States 2. There can be a difference in cost, the resources you're creating inside the region. Generally, I stick to East US or East US 2. I'm going to choose Windows 10 Pro, but I'm going to, on purpose, leave a box unchecked. I want you to see what happens when it fails to validate. Okay, this is not going to be a spot instance rather. I'll use the standard D2S V3 with 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigs of memory. This is the cost for the VM if you let it run 24/7 for the entire month. Obviously, the more virtual cores, the more RAM, the more expensive. Okay, I'm going to use my standard admin user. I'm going to use my standard admin user password. Okay, I'm going to allow 2 ports here, RDP and HTTP. We're going to install the IIS role on this Windows 10 box just to show you we can get to it through RDP over the internet, which obviously is a security issue, but we'll also be able to browse the default built-in IIS page. Now here is the box I'm going to leave unchecked. Leaving this unchecked means that the validation will fail. I just want you to see what that looks like. You can, if you want, add a data disk. Whether it's a Windows or Linux VM, you're going to get an operating system disk. And you'll have some choices based on the region you're in. Premium solid state drive is more expensive, but obviously it's faster. We'll leave that as it is. We can create and attach a new disk. Data disk, it's going to be empty. 1 terabyte is fine. We're going to use the default encryption at rest policy. We're going to click OK here. Networking. A public IP is going to be created inside this subnet, and a VNIC, a virtual network interface. I'm sorry, a virtual network connected to a VNIC. Verify that my ports are open. Now, generally speaking, for test VMs, I would disable boot diagnostics, but in this case, we'll leave it enabled. I'm going to enable the OS guest diagnostics. Generally, you would do this for production machines, but I want you to see all of the extra stuff that gets created. Okay, advanced, we're not going to make any changes here, but I'll show you the extension pane. Microsoft is forever adding additional extensions that you can install as part of a VM that you're working with. I've not tested nearly half of these. Obviously, most of them come with an extra cost, so we're not going to do that. Tags, you can take them or leave them. I'll use tags if I'm working in an environment where charges are billed back to the appropriate department. You don't want IT footing the bill for your entire IT or Azure infrastructure. So maybe accounting has a need for this Windows 10 VM in the cloud. Maybe they're doing payroll or something like that. At the end of the month, my invoice can be sorted by tag, and I can see, oh, accounting is responsible for these 12 resources. This is what's going to get created. Okay, not just the virtual machine, but all of these other things. Now I'm going to review and create, and again, remember the validation is going to fail. And I can see right here, it's under basics. There's the red dot. It's going to check everything else first, though. When this comes back, I should have just that one error, and then I have to go back and check that box. Okay. So we'll check that box. I'll skip right to review and create then. No sense in going back through everything. The validation should pass. Once I'm allowed, I will click the create button. And while this is deploying, I'm going to kick off the creation of a Linux VM, and then I'm going to pause the video until all of the resources are created. So you could see this Windows VM, standard D2S v3, is going to cost me 9.5 cents an hour if it runs 24/7. All right, so while that's going, let's create a second virtual machine. Is there any problem with? No. I can create 2, 10, 100 VMs at the same time. Obviously, if I had 100 VMs to create, I would use an ARM template. But in this case, we're just doing 2 one-times. Linux VM01. East US 2 is fine. We'll change, let's go with Ubuntu version 20.04. Long-term servicing, I believe, is what that acronym stands for. I'm going to use the same size D2S v3. I can click the box here. It takes a minute. Okay, there you can see I'm going to be paying the same amount of money for this Linux VM. Okay, we'll use a password here. Admin user is my default. We have to confirm that password. We're going to allow SSH TCP port 22 over the internet. We'll do exactly the same thing here. We'll create and attach a data disk. It'll be empty. It'll be 1 terabyte in size. The other options remain the same. It's going to create a new public IP in the existing subnet, existing VNet. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, this version of Linux does not support guest OS diagnostics. Okay, so one of the things I do like about using the portal as opposed to practicing in PowerShell. With PowerShell, I love the fact that it's granular and you can set up a script and you can schedule it to run. It's almost, I guess it is impossible to do that through the GUI, but I wouldn't have seen this message until tomorrow morning, right? If I have this as a script in action scheduled to run tonight. Okay, now I didn't do this with my Windows machine, but I'm going to delete it shortly here anyway. One of the things I do enjoy doing, or do like doing, it saves me some money, I enable my automatic shutdown, 7 p.m., but I live in the Eastern time zone. Okay, so we're GMT -5. We're Universal Coordinated Time. I'm going to get an email at approximately 6:45 telling me, hey, your VM's about to get shut down. Okay, let's see what kind of extensions they have. Yeah, pretty much kind of looks the same, except Agent for Linux server. Okay, we'll tag department again. We'll tag department again, and let's give this one to, oh, I don't know. Let's give it back to accounting. 12 resources are going to get created again. Now, I didn't intentionally skip anything here, so if I get the red dot, okay, I would have been surprised. Now you can see here, the deployment of Windows is still ongoing. I'm going to wait till I can click the create button here. I'll pause the video and we'll come back when all of these VMs are created. Okay, it took the Linux VM slightly longer to deploy, obviously, because I started it after the Windows VM. I'm going to point out here 2 minutes and 10 seconds from the time I hit the create button on the Linux VM until both the Windows and the Linux VMs were created. The Windows VM created when the stopwatch was at approximately 2 minutes, so maybe 10 seconds sooner. Okay, so we'll go to the resource. I can see I've got a tag here, I've got a public IP, I can see what version of Ubuntu I'm running, and the fact that I'm running a standard usage, Delta 2S v3. We'll go over to my delete me resource group though, and let's refresh that. I've got a total of 14 records. I created 2 VMs, that's it. And what I got instead was a total of 14 items. Well, like I said, your VMs are built inside a virtual network. We need a storage account to hold your disks. Here's my Linux VM01. Here's its public IP and its network security group. Here's its VNIC and its 2 disks. And then down here, I've got my Windows VM stuff. Operating system disk and data disk. That's it. That's as easy as it is to create VMs manually. Now, let's do this. Let's go to my Windows VM. Now, I'm going to do 2 things here. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard, my public IP. I'm going to try to connect via RDP. Then I want to install the IIS role on it. Okay, this is a self-signed certificate issue. It's not trusted, but I know I'm the one who created it, so in this test environment, I'm good to go. Okay, because I'm logged into my home computer as me using my Yahoo account or my Microsoft account, I need to specify a different account name. The // is indicative of that local computer's admin user. Again, my certificate is untrusted. I can say yes. I can view the certificate and install it into my trusted root. And this will take a minute because it has to build my profile. Then what we're going to do is we're going to try to install IIS using PowerShell as opposed to going through roles and features. Okay, so this will take a second. All right, and just like a Windows 10 computer you'd set up at work, at your house, asks you a couple of questions. It should ask me if I want my network to be discoverable. Generally speaking, I will answer yes, because it sets the network type to private as opposed to public. Public, the firewall restrictions are obviously more strict, and I would then have to get into the firewall and manually make changes unless I'm using some kind of third-party firewall. All right, for some reason, my RDP is not full screen. This is my personal computer's taskbar and things that are running. But if you click inside the RDP session and tap your start button, it'll bring up the start menu. You just can't see it. I just started typing PowerShell here. I'm going to run this as an administrator. Now, one of the first things I always do is increase the size of the font because I'm old and half blind, and I want to be able to see the screen and all the text inside it. All right, so what are we going to do here? We're going to do install Windows feature. name is equal to web, I believe it's web-server. Uh-oh, not feeling warm and fuzzy. Did I spell it incorrectly? Install dash. Okay, IIS is not going to work. All right, so apparently either my command syntax is incorrect or that install Windows feature from PowerShell isn't working. So if I go into Windows features instead, I'm able to turn this on, IIS. I can make it an FTP server if I want to, but nah, no need. Let's let that set up. All right, so IIS got installed. 20.114.144.93 is my public IP. I tried to get here before IIS was installed, and this is the error I'm expecting. The web server wasn't running. Let's see if it runs now. And there's the default homepage for IIS, Internet Information Services, what Windows uses as its web server. Okay, so that's it. You can create VMs manually. You can open ports to the internet. You can RDP into this box. You can set up roles and features. And I can turn this Windows 10 box into a full-blown web server if I want. Obviously not great for production, but in a test environment or maybe a small intranet type server just for the IT department would be ideal. And that's all for this video. Hopefully you found it useful, and I will see you in the next one.